Hi! Welcome back to Blood Bowl. I'm going to play the next 3 matches of this cup in one go and run it pretty fast except for the highlights. That's a touchdown from later on. One of the few that I score. So where were we? The Pink Ladies are about to fight these Norse dudes. They've got basically every dude in the team has block, which sucks. That means they're going to be really good, understandably, at blocking. They're pretty well developed. They've got a lot of level 2s and 3s. They've got werewolves on the team who have frenzy. Dauntless isn't going to be such a problem. I didn't know what it did, but it allows you to block against a harder player, a player with greater strength more effectively. The berserkers block frenzy and jump up. Frenzy allows you to do 2 blocks effectively, or forces you to do 2 blocks. The werewolves have frenzy. This one's got block and guard as well. Guard allows you to not be influenced by tackle zones. This one's just got frenzy, and this yeti is a beast, literally and metaphorically. Disturbing presence makes it hard to recover the ball in its presence. Wild animal, though, means that sometimes it doesn't act, which is good news. I had a look at star players, but they were a little out of my price range, and plus they've got loner, which makes them tough to play. I forget exactly what loner does, but it's something like requiring a dice roll to be effective. So I ended up going with the regular Halfling Master Chief, which steals rerolls potentially, and an extra team reroll. So starting with the kickoff, I won't show you with the setup. I'm just trying to punt it to the back of the pitch, force them to run a little bit. This is a really bashy team with high mobility, so they are likely to kick my butt. The clock ran on around in this first turn, so we start in turn 2, which is good news. So basically one turn's already gone, and they turn over pretty quickly. The Yeti fails to hit me, or rather does a both down. He knocks me out, or he gives me broken ribs, which misses next game, which kind of sucks, but it's just an undeveloped lineman, so it's not the end of the world. I get quite a nice block in here. There we go, and take the ball out of his hands, or knock the ball out of his hands, because he'd left that cage pretty exposed. And then it's just a question of following up and positioning. And I go for a foul on the Yeti, but it doesn't follow through, unfortunately. I get a lucky block on that werewolf with 1 dice, but don't do it any permanent damage. And I'm just trying to knock the ball out of their hands. I go for a pretty risky run at it here, but I fail the second dodge, get tripped, and it's a turnover. Fortunately, I'm not severely damaged. The beast fails to get up. They obviously close in on the ball and make a big old cage, which is going to be pretty hard to take down, and I suffer another knockout, which kind of sucks. So I've got 1 injury and 1 knockout, and the injury is going to miss a match, but it's better than a permanent stat loss, which is what some of the injuries can be, or indeed a death. Although with an undeveloped character, it's not the end of the world. Pushing them back and just trying to break the cage down a bit, and then I'm pulling away from them, trying to keep them penned in, but also going for a foul, and I get sent off. So that is a turnover there. I lose control. Again, they're just building this cage out, and I forget exactly what they do. I think, yeah, they make a run for it, and then do a pass down here. Sorry, the wind's kind of picking up a little bit, but do a pass down here, and then make a run for the line and score an early touchdown. There are their cheerleaders. So again, I've got sent off and an injury, but my knockout recovers, which is nice. So I'm only 2 men, or 2 women, I should say, down. Setting up for the receiving, it's my usual layout. Catchers on the left and right. And then I'm trying to blitz a hole through to the left to run my catcher up. I knock this guy down, but without any real injury. And then go to run to pick up the ball and do a throwing pass to my catcher. No, sorry, I don't pass the catcher yet. I'm just moving the catcher into position. And then pushing these guys back so that they'll have to blitz, so that they'll only get 1 attack. And they fail a dodge trying to run through the line, so it's a pretty quick turnover. I push these guys back, giving my catcher a nice run through, and then do a running pass here, which succeeds thanks to my leveled up thrower and catcher, and then just run her down the line. Unfortunately, I forgot about their frenzy characters, and their wild beast is now up. But I'm just knocking people down and going for just trying to eliminate them. Here, there's an attack and another attack, and I get knocked down there, knocked out as well, and obviously drop the ball. They're pretty skilled at picking it up, so they run to the back of the pitch and cage it up again. So all I can really do is keep them on the back foot and keep that cage, there we go, both down, turnover, keep them pushed back so that they can't score in the next 2 rounds. This match does not go brilliantly, it has to be said, but at least no one dies. That's the upside. These guys massively outskill me. Again, a failed dodge, and not much more happens, so I've just cut straight ahead to half-time. There was just 2 more rounds of me faffing around. There were no major injuries or points scored. The halfling gives me a reroll at the expense of one of theirs, and a high kick sends it off, which would have allowed me to move underneath it to catch it, but it goes off the pitch, so I can just hand it to my thrower. And then I'm in position here to blitz this guy, although there's a bit of overlap, so both down, they're both blockers, not much of a result there. And then it's just a question of pushing these guys back to get them out of the way. There we go, and I managed to get a bit of a takedown there, but the Yeti is there threatening my line and generally being mean. And I'm leaving my thrower at the back because she can't be approached yet. I just want to see what sort of position they'll go into and leave it there. They get a knockdown on a lineman, but that's not the end of the world. Knockdown on the blitzer on the left is slightly more serious. Anyway, coming up here now, I've got a bit of a clear run, so I come up here, pass it to my catcher, who I then run down the field and repeat my effort from last time. But this time I've got a few more moves left, and I can get into position to keep them pinned down. I've got a few rerolls, so I am taking advantage of those and just trying to basically take these guys out as much as possible and just push them back and then get out of range with my weak characters. Now I've successfully dodged, I can move my character up here to block and then bring her around for another slightly risky dodge just to block that runner if he's thinking about closing up. Fortunately, they fail their dodge and it's a very quick turnover, so all I have to do is dodge to complete this, or dodge and go for it to complete that touchdown. So that brings us up to 2-1 and a few experience points for my catcher, a few more, I should say. I get the kickoff here, I kick it straight to them, unfortunately. They manage to push through my line but then get tripped and suffer a knockdown, so they haven't really achieved very much this round. I'm just going for the pushbacks here. There aren't too many rounds left to play, and given their cagey play generally, I think I can probably get away with just pushing them back and allowing them to cage and just keeping them penned in. We'll let the rest of this play out. They've dropped the ball and I go for a very risky run and pick up, but not much comes from it. Now they've got it in their hands, and they're going for another cage at the back, always moving backwards, but they fail a dodge and trip, leaving their ball carrier slightly exposed, which is good news. So I get my runner-up and go for a very risky blitz on their ball carrier, I think, after just knocking him down. Knock that guy. Oh no, I don't go for the blitz, I just push him back and take him down a little bit, so that's nice. And then it's just a question of blocking their advances to make sure that they can't do anything too rash or advance too far. The Yeti has Frenzy and manages to get a nice push in. Takes me down, it's just a knockdown, so nothing too serious, and their cage can't advance very far. I'm pretty confident at this point that with only 3 rounds to play, they're not going to be able to do too much damage. And I want to pin that runner so that he can't get thrown to. My interception isn't great, my agility isn't really high enough, and now I'm just pulling back again to force their blitz. Their runner comes up and goes for a tackle. Their berserker comes up and goes for a tackle, and they just shift their cage forward a little bit, so there's nothing too threatening there. Then get up and push this berserker back again. I re-roll and go for a double push on him and eventually take him down. And then go for a pretty risky play here after covering their lineman, but I managed to take him down, but that still leaves this runner pretty wide open. And really what I should have done is covered their tackle zones. Because my interception isn't great, I should have given them a penalty to catch. But I'm bringing more people down. Here we go. And just basically trying to ensure that they can't do anything too rash. He goes for the throw, and it's a pretty nice throw, and they snatch another touchdown, unfortunately, and this is really far at the end. Not much else happens in that match. Mimnusa, the line woman, is MVP, although quite why, I don't know. My team value is up to 1,000, and I've got 80,000 in the bank. My line woman there, I can't even read her name, is out, so I'm thinking now it's about time to buy an apothecary. They're only 50,000. So that seems to make sense. I don't want another injury, and certainly not a serious one, on one of my leveled up players now. But the experience is coming along okay. I've got 2 characters at level 1 and 2 more with 5 experience each, and at 6 experience they will level up. I'm back against the Khemri. We played these guys, I think, in match 1. They've got skeletons who are kind of dumb. They're basically a low agility, low movement, high strength team with high armor, so they're all about the bashing. They've also got regeneration, so even though it's easy to injure them, or relatively easy given their armor, they're hard to keep off. They're hard to give permanent injury to. That kick couldn't have gone better. It goes right to the back of the pitch. I stole a reroll off them, and weather made the kickoff roll was a weather roll, so it made the ball bounce 1 square further. They're coming in just for a bit of aggressive blitzing. These Tomb Guardians are kind of annoying. They're very, very strong, and one of them's got guard, I think, which makes them very, very hard to block against, or to get more than a 1 dice block, even with a big overlap when they're standing next to each other. So I go for a risky blitz here. Risky block there, but it pays off. I managed to stun the guy. And then it's just a question of moving to just provide a bit of a kind of barrier against their runner, although I've left kind of a huge hole in the middle, but they're going to cage this up. They're not going to risk a playing move. They get a turnover there with a failed block. It's both down, so that works out well in my favour. And then it's just a question of pushing their Tomb Guardians back and keeping them at a distance, and then closing up the gap. There we go, another pushback. And closing up the gap here just to make sure that they're not going to be able to run straight down. So giving them no real opportunity to play. And sure enough, they run around to the right, hoping to get through that gap, but their cage is going to make that pretty tough. They went for another failed block, which resulted in a turnover, so that was good news. And then it's just a question of keeping their Tomb Guardian away. And another double block against him. So now their main line is actually pretty well defeated, and I'm just going for a risky block here, but it pays off. I managed to stun the guy and then pull back so I'm out of range and can't be blocked easily next turn. Then I run around here and go for an attack on this guy to just push him back. Didn't really pay off, but I wasted a reroll on it. I'm now down to 2 rerolls with 5 rounds to play in this half. And it's back to their turn. They come in for the blitz, and the cage doesn't really move significantly. Their ball carrier pretty much stays where he is, and they're just protecting him, which is good news. As long as I can prevent them moving too far, I'm going to just be able to play the long game and then wait to receive next turn and hopefully run circles around them, or rather next half. I go for a risky push against him, but manage to get away with it. And same again here, somehow the dice are with me this time and get a knockout, which is nice. It's not an injury, but it'll take him off the pitch for this play, which just makes their cage even more exposed. Bring up here for a 2 dice block, and it's another knockdown, and now they've got very few players left active on the pitch, which is great news, or at least standing upright in this turn. They'll be getting some more up next round, but it just means that I can really put the pressure on them and really kind of pin their movement down. And sure enough, they don't really have much to do here. They go for a blitz there to knock that carrier out, but there's not much else they can do. You see here, they just shift to the right, and they're moving in for the next round. I stun one of their line guys there, take down another one, and really at this point I haven't got much movement that I need to do, so it's just a question of keeping their players pinned down and not allowing them the benefit of a block in the next round. And just trying to eliminate that cage and expose the ball carrier. There's still 3 rounds to play. They're being very lame. So anything I can do to force that ball carrier to isolate himself is going to be good. Sure enough, he goes backwards and back to the middle. I get knocked out, but that's not a problem. I can take a knockout. I don't mind that. So down to what? 10 people on the pitch, I think, at this stage. And then just again making sure that they haven't got an obvious way to break through the line. Going for a very risky block there, but I wanted to plug the hole. That was very important. And then just pushing this guy back to allow me to block against this guy. And I can follow up and keep him pinned the wrong side of the line. Now they're coming in for their obligatory blitz, but there's not much else they can do. Again, the ball carrier is just kind of faffing around, and they're really focusing on keeping that cage built and trying to punch a line through. But with only one blitz per turn, they're really not going to get a chance to do that. So I just keep pushing them away, trying to keep them basically whittled and pinned, and making sure that they're not going to have an easy opportunity to attack me. There we go. Not much to do here. Another pushback. Don't want to follow because don't want him to have a block. But I managed to snag an injury, which is great news. It's only a skeleton, but that'll do. Unfortunately, he regenerates, so he goes straight to the reserve pile instead of going into the injury bay. But at least he's down, and that's some experience points for my blitzer. Again, they're coming in, they're going for a pretty aggressive play on that character, but they only managed to stun it, which is good news. But there's a knockout there, unfortunately. They have punched a bit of a hole in the line, but they're not going to risk moving, and they certainly can't score from this point. And now it's just a question of trying to lay some pain down in the final round, because I'm obviously not going to do very well at stripping the ball. I didn't want to risk this just because these guys are so strong. If I'd got anyone particularly isolated, I could have taken a lot more injury than I did, so I thought I'd just keep them pinned down. Anyway, there are their skeleton cheerleaders. They have no one knocked out. I've got 2 knockouts who come back, which is great news, and we're straight to the kickoff. Halfling Master Chef gives me nothing, and we both get a bribe, which means that I can start fouling, although I failed to do any meaningful fouling this round. Now this match is actually, we're on our second one, right? So this is, there we go, pushing that guy back to make room for my catcher. But this is the first of the playoff rounds, so I need to win this to go through to win the match. And at the moment it's 0-0, I'm receiving, I know my catcher on the left is pretty solid. And I go for a very risky run there with my catcher and somehow get it. I certainly didn't deserve it, but I failed to pick it up. I'm not going to waste a reroll picking it up because it was my last action of the turn anyway, and they're nowhere near close enough to go for the ball. And in fact all that's going to do is tempt them to get out of position and get their players the wrong side of the pitch, freeing up my catcher for later. So sure enough, they come running down here. I go for the pickup and miss it again. Now I'm in a spot of bother because they're going to be able to grab the ball like that and make a dash for it. Even though they don't have too much movement, they get a turnover by doing a failed block, which is lucky because it's left their ball carrier exposed. Dodge is in my favour here, it's going to allow me to get away. I take a reroll and push this guy, which could have been better. But at least it's a pushback and he'll have to do a go for it to run for the ball next time. And then it's just a question of closing in as many troops as I can around this carrier to add tackle zones so that he's going to have a harder time getting away in the next run. I fail a dodge there pretty convincingly. And so it's a turnover. And just waiting for them to act. Of course they fail their dodge, that was never really going to succeed, so that leaves the ball comfortably in my half with me to play. My thrower is free, so I can run to grab the ball. I've got no rerolls left, so I'm kind of being quite risky here, but I run back and chuck it to my catcher. I luckily get an accurate pass. My catcher is now basically free, so I run her down the left hand side. Again, this is pretty much the only way I'm scoring touchdowns at the moment. But go for a blitz first just to ensure that guy won't prove problematic, and then run over here knowing that this skeleton is going to have a super hard time of it. Get a blitz in on that guy, which doesn't do too much damage, and then go for a risky run here. There we go, to come around and just do a bit more blocking, and then go for a double dice block on that guy and get a pretty sweet knockout. Then run this blitzer up here, and just bring this lineman, or maybe it's a blitzer, up to pin down their block raw, or whatever it's called. They waste their blitz, surprisingly, and then that guy goes for it and fails his roll and just falls over on his own, which is awesome. So I get a turnover. And at this point, I'm just kind of looking for easy fights, because I'm fairly confident that that guy, even if he gets up, isn't going to be able to get to me. So I'm just trying to injure their players and see what happens. There's nothing else that's really an easy attack, so now I go for the touchdown. Yay! So that puts me 1-0 in the lead with a few rounds to play, and knowing their receiving play, they're going to cage the ball up and it's going to be easy enough to pin them off. The kickoff event gives me, gives them rocks thrown at their faces, which is great news. So one of their players is already down. He's not damaged or anything, but at least he's knocked out for their first play. They run through here, and he trips of his own volition and knocks himself out, which is kind of genius. So that is a turnover. And then I dodge out of the way and go for a foul. And I get an injury, which is awesome. So that's a little bit of experience for one of my linemen. Or is it? I don't know if they get experience for a foul like that. Maybe they don't. Anyway, I get a knockdown here. And another injury, which is great news. Regeneration, I think, doesn't kick in. No, it doesn't. But that was pretty much the end of the match. Those were just the highlights that were left. Nothing much else happened. They just fiddled around with their cage. My blitzer, Aaron Wen, was the MVP. And you can see now my team's starting to shape up pretty nicely. I've got a couple of level 2s, 3 characters with 5, and the 2 injuries in that previous match gave 2 more players 2 experience each. I'm debating if I should buy anything more. I don't think an assistant coach is a bad idea necessarily, especially considering they're so cheap, and it may help in a kickoff event. And now I forgot to look at who I was playing, and I just went for the match, but they've given me so much money. Their team value is ridiculously high. So I can buy a Master Chef, an extra reroll, and a Wizard. And the Wizards allow you to cast Fireballs or Lightning Bolts. Fireballs do an area of effect damage, and Lightning Bolts do a single very hard hitting point of damage. I kick the ball down the line. We've met these guys before. They're the guys we saw in the first match of this video. They've obviously come through as well, and they kind of decimated me last time, so I'm not very confident that I'm going to win this tournament, but it's all good experience. And every game I play, I'm learning a little bit more about positioning and thinking about how I lay these characters up and learning how to fight against different types of teams, which is great. Their Yeti fails. He doesn't roll his wild animal score, so he can't move. And that guy fails to pass the ball, which is awesome. So the ball is now on the ground. And I knock him down and sort of follow this Yeti up. I'm pushing that Yeti down, and then I go for a very risky pickup here, which obviously doesn't go well. In fact, the dodge failed, and my lineman got knocked out, but that's not the end of the world. The Yeti is stuck on the ground. Their throwers pick the ball up, and they're building a pretty tight cage. Their runner is trying to break through the pack. 2 runners, in fact, so I'm slightly concerned about those 2 because they're not too bad at catching, but that guy knocked himself out, which was great news. I want to blitz their runner, but instead I end up pushing him back, and you can see the positioning there wasn't great. And now I'm just trying to basically push their cage in and prevent them moving too far. I'm worried about them catching, but that guy actually manages to trip and injure himself, which is awesome. So they're now down a player. I'm very happy about that. I bring my blitz around and attack there and knock their runner down, so he's not in a good position for a catch. And push their runner back and keep him pinned down, so he's going to have a harder time catching with 3 tackle zones on him. I bring my blitzer and my thrower around just to guard that hole, and then my line women in to guard the runner. And bring my blitzer up around the top, I think. No, I don't. I just pull the guys away. They're still bringing their thrower down in a cage, keeping him protected. Their Yeti has got displeasing odor or whatever it is, which makes actions harder within his area. But the runner fails his dodge, which is great news, and I get a very quick turnover. So he's knocked himself down. At this point, I want to go for a blitz against that werewolf. And I push him back. And I'm just trying to keep these guys caged in. I'm going for a blitz against that lineman, again just to weaken their cage a little bit and force them into position, and then pull back so that they don't have any obvious blitzes immediately. This is when I bring my blitzer up around the back, just in case they foolishly expose their cage. Their thrower goes here and goes for a pass off, but fumbles it. I don't know why they went for a pass off to a berserker of all people, but sure enough they did. And that is a turnover, which is leaving the ball on the pitch there. So I want to get this guy out of the way because it's just going to be a bit easier to pick up. I knock him down and take him out of the game, which is great news. He's injured and they don't have an apothecary by the looks of things. And then I want to push that guy out of the way. And then here I go for a very risky pickup with my thrower. Managed to get it somehow. And then run it back. All I need is a dodge here. It's a relatively straightforward dodge, so I pull that out of the bag somehow and then toss it to my line woman here, but fail the catch. And the ball rolls to there, so that's a turnover, but you can see I got really lucky and it's tucked in behind a pretty tight line. They've only got one blitz available and they use their Yeti, who doesn't even get the opportunity to move. He fails his wild animal roll, so that's awesome sauce. Now I'll go here and another fumble, which is a bit of a nightmare, but at this point there's only 2 rounds left in the game, so I think we're in pretty good shape. They reverse the scenario and go for a pickup, and then come running out, pass it to the Berserker, and the Berserker, I guess, is going to go charging down the line, but he goes to pass to this runner. I go for an interception with my thrower and fail it pretty convincingly. But he fumbles his throw and throws it miles away. So then at this point, I've got 2 rounds left to play. And what I should have done is run my linewoman a lot further down the field. Because that throw was pretty beautiful, but now I don't have enough moves left to be able to make it to the end of the pitch. So I really wasn't thinking ahead. But I kill... I kill their runner, only their apothecary fixes him, so he's just badly hurt, which is unfortunate. And that is the end of that. Nothing much else happens. There was no scoring because I couldn't make it to the end line, although they didn't regain possession. They kick it here, and I've got my team lined up relatively okay. Now it's just a question of trying to punch a hole for my catcher. I get a knockout there, which is pretty nice. I go for a 2-block push against these guys. I'm just trying to thin the line out. And then push this Yeti back to there so that they can't get an easy block against me next round. Then I go and grab the ball. I fail the roll, but that's not the end of the world. They're not going to be able to get to it this round without passing through a tackle zone. And sure enough, they go for it to try and get to it, and the dude just trips himself up. So they didn't actually get much of a movement on at all. I knock their Berserker down, or Werewolf, or whatever it is on the left, and then just push their runner back a bit and go for a bit of a risky run with my catcher, but successfully manage to put her upfield. I bring the other catcher up to the left, so I've got my options open, and then fail the pickup, but again, not too much of a concern. They haven't got anyone close enough to be able to pick that up. They knock my catcher out, unfortunately, so now I'm back to my left-hand catcher only, which means they can pin her down pretty effectively. These linemen and runners are closing in pretty tight on the right, so I really need to make this next pickup. But first of all, I need to knock this lineman out of the way so that my catcher's free. Sure enough, I run it out and do a pretty sweet pass, if I say so myself. Again, lucky with the dice, and just run the catcher down. And I risk the going for it just to push her 1 more square or 2 more squares. I figure at that point there's not too much to worry about, and then I just try to pin this Berserker down so that he hasn't got an opportunity to run. He manages to get away with the dodge, but foolishly they don't go for a blitz against him, meaning all I've got to do is get dodge in on the next round. I suffer a knockout, but I can handle that at this point because now it's a score and I'm 1-0 up against this beast of a team somehow. I've still got no idea how I really managed that. There are my cheerleaders. Yay, cheerleaders! They've got 2 knockouts and 2 casualties. I've got 2 knockouts. They're only fielding 10 people on the pitch, and I managed to get an extra reroll. So I'm up to 5 rerolls at this point. I get another knockout, so now we're down to 10 players each, unfortunately. Their Yeti doesn't manage to do too much damage. Their lineman knocks someone down, but that's not the end of the world. And I'm in a pretty good position. They've got 4 rounds left to play with only 2 rerolls. All I've got to do is keep their cage pinned down so that they can't score and pick off any people who manage to make it through. I take their Yeti down and stun him, so he is down on the floor, and hopefully his wild animal rolls are going to keep him there for a little while. He's down for at least 1 more round, and I also managed to stun their Berserker, giving them 2 linemen behind the line, but their linemen have pretty low agility and no real ability to catch the ball. They go for a cage up on the right and bring their linemen up, and then fail a block for a turnover. So now it's just a question of trying to put their team down. At the moment it's 10 on 10. And just really punch our way through to their ball carrier. And sure enough, somehow against all odds, I managed to put most of their team on the floor. You can see there's really not much going on. And then bring a guy down to pin that runner so that he's not going to be able to take the ball. They manage to push through here. They get a broken jaw, but I re-roll it and just get badly hurt. So I've got an injury, but it's not a permanent injury. So that's good news. Now it's a question of just pushing through here. I take the block here because I don't particularly want to push that runner away. And I've got them a little bit caged in, but not really as much as I'd like. A lot of their players are on the floor, but there's not much else they can do, so I go for a push against their ball carrier, and then a blitz when he's exposed here to take him down and offer up the ball. Then block against that guy pushes him, and I'm hoping the ball will roll into my hands, but unfortunately it doesn't. And at this point I don't have much opportunity left. I go for another very risky pickup, but fumble it, causing a turnover. But again, fortunately most of their guys are on the floor, so there's not much they can do. Now at this point, he goes for a run, drops it, falls over, fails his dodge, falls over and knocks the ball into my hands. But again, it's the final round, and you can see it's exactly the same situation as last time. My blitzer doesn't have enough movement to get to the end of the pitch, so I just go for as much damage as I can. Nothing much else happens this match, and that pretty much wraps that up. My star player was Xanthippe, the catcher, even though she just got knocked out and got taken out, I think, within the first turn of the first half. I managed to take the trophy home, and I won some prestige. So I came top there, 10 prestige, yay, and a bunch of money too. I also managed to get the best thrower and the best receiver awards, and I got a level up for a blitzer, which is great news. So she only gets a regular throw. On doubles you get to choose from extra skills, and I end up taking guard, which allows me to add her as a +1 dice even if she's got people in her tackle zone. Ideally I'd rather have that on a lineman, but such is life. Anyway, I will see you in the next match for the next cup. Let me know if you're loving these. Lots of love, bye!